Welcome to Pac West Bassin. After the last couple videos I made dealing with crankbaits and wintertime crankbait reaction fishing, I had a couple people reach out to me and ask me what my story was about how I got into crankbait fishing, or bass fishing in general. So, this is my story. You are watching my educational and informational channel about bass fishing and all topics related to bass fishing. Click that subscribe button and bell icon to get notifications when I upload a new video. Back in my early days of bass fishing, for some of you that's going to be way before you were born, but go back to 1991, 1992. Ironically, that was when Robert Hamilton won the Bassmasters Classic. During that championship, he followed shad around, throwing little soft plastic jerk baits quite a bit. That got me thinking, why are they targeting those bait fish? And my friend Danny, who taught me how to bass fish when I was a little kid, he was one of my dad's best friends. I asked him these questions, and he basically told me, he's like, well, fish are going to follow food. And that's all I got out of him. That's it. He turned around, made another cast. So he wasn't going to give any secrets away to me on that trip. So I had to do some research on my own. And that's when I found Bassmaster Magazine. I knew nothing about anything on the TV shows other than randomly they came across TNN on Saturday or Sunday morning. And if I was lucky enough to be up early, 5 a.m.-ish, I could actually watch some of it. So I got my first Bassmaster Magazine in about 1993. After Hamilton's Classic win, David Fritts kind of took over the fishing landscape with his crankbaiting system called the Fritz Blitz. It wasn't coined quite yet, but in 93 he won the Classic Championship using crankbaits on High Rock Lake. And this magazine right here was one that put crankbaiting on the map for me because the bait in the fish's mouth. Rick Clunn had used that a few years prior and had done very well on it. That's an RC3. Ironically, I still have an original RC3 that I bought after getting this magazine because I saw it in the fish's mouth, which as a kid, about 4th, 5th grade, that meant that bait worked. So I had to buy, so I got one in that color, one a little smaller for smallmouth in the same color, another one in what they called baby bass back then. But in this magazine, it had a little insert in it. In the very back, in the ads, I don't know how well this is going to turn out, but it had an ad for a David Fritz crankbait video. I had to beg and plead my dad to order me that video. In 1994, that video was $25, which is probably like $100 nowadays. And I got a lot of no's before finally he got tired of me asking and just said, fine, order it. So as I waited for the next almost 6 months for the video to show up, one of my next Bassmaster magazines that came out was the July-August 94 edition, which in it, on page 43, had an episode called David Fritz's Crankbait Secrets. This was the beginning of the eye-opener for me. David Fritz went into details about everything about his crankbaiting system, which would be coined the Fritz Blitz. He covered all kinds of topics that I just soaked in like a sponge, which also led to me ordering a ton more crankbaits to my father's haste. But he realized it was a constructive outlet and I wasn't doing anything stupid. I was just spending my day on the water. In the meantime, my dad and stepmom moved to Glen Haven on a lake up there called Reed Lake, which meant every Saturday and Sunday I spent with my dad and stepmom, I could just walk down to the lake and fish off either a dock that was down there or what we called the sandbar. A couple months later, part 2 of this came out. This was the September-October edition. And this magazine I flipped through 400 times, making notes. That way I could quick reference them when I was out on the dock if the temperature dropped, or if it started raining, or if the water was more cloudy or more clear. I probably wore the pages off of this thing. So, page 50 came this one. Number 2. And at that point, I was sold. He was the reigning classic champion, and who was I to say that that wasn't going to work? I bought a ton of Pose crankbaits because that's what he threw. The Pose Super Cedars 300 and 400 series. As you can see, this one here has taken a beating. I threw this off every piece of structure in Reed Lake and Cane Lake that I could do. Another Super Cedar 300. Had a bunch of the 400s, but I ran into the problem real quickly that when you're fishing around timber, those 400s dove a lot deeper, and I lost 3 of them in one day and was extremely mad as a kid, being as these were like $6 a pop. As a kid that had no job, that meant you had to try to con your parents into ordering you another one and then waiting another 2 to 3 weeks for Bass Pro Shops to send them to you. Mail order catalog is all we had back then. Yes, I'm old. Then the even larger ones came out. This is the biggest Pose crankbait that I ever owned, and I never caught a fish on it, no matter how hard I tried. My great-grandparents had a beach house on Lake Whatcom. As we know, Whatcom really doesn't have a largemouth population. There are a few here and there. I have never caught one in 35 years of fishing at Lake Whatcom. Although I did see one wade in at a tournament once. So my grandpa and I were at H&H in Bellingham, and I saw a crankbait on the shelf that I had never seen before. And I begged and pleaded to have my grandpa buy me that crankbait, and I still remember him to me looking and saying, "You're seriously going to pay $8 for that bait?" I'm like, "No, you are." He started laughing because I pointed it back to him, and he's like, "Okay, I guess you made your point." Picked it off the shelf. That bait was a chrome blue 3/8 ounce rattle and fat wrap with a chartreuse lip. I put that bait through absolute hell for about 3 summers out at Lake Whatcom, just banging it off of everything. Well, one day, fishing with my friend Ryan Razor, we came along the shoreline. I planged it off a dock on accident, and I reeled it back, and all I got was my lip. I had to go retrieve the bait because I had broke the lip off of it. That is the definition of true depression as a child. This is that exact bait. You can see how destroyed by hook marks and dock planking and everything else, and the lip destroyed. A few years ago, I actually found another one of these. I don't even remember where it was at, but I had to buy it just out of nostalgia for how many fish this caught me as a kid. This bait probably caught over 500-600 smallmouth out of Lake Whatcom when I was a kid, and I just had to have another one just in case. So there's my story on how I got into crankbaiting. Hopefully this will help you guys, or maybe it'll help you research some of the histories of crankbaiting. The guys that really got me into it: Rick Clunn, David Fritts. I mean, after the Fritz Blitz came Mark Davis winning a classic on bomber crankbaits. So my early days of bass fishing were really formed by a lot of guys fishing hard baits, and that is before Kevin Van Dam really got into fishing crankbaits and winning classics and all that kind of stuff. So never underestimate the power of Bassmaster magazine. So according to my wife, David Fritz, if you're watching, This is all your fault. Thank you.